Hey there, darlings. Welcome to the Farmer's Table. My name's Jess. If you are new here, I'm so happy to have you on my channel today. And if you're not new here, welcome back. I'm glad that you're here as well. Today, we are continuing in the theme of talking about good food for hard times, specifically meals that are nourishing, delicious, and easy on the budget. Today, I want to talk to you about the cheapest and fastest way to eat dry beans, and that is by cooking them in the pressure cooker. Dry beans are about the most affordable solid nutrition that you can get. And not only are they great if you're trying to really stretch your budget, or if you're just trying to maybe kick fast food or convenience foods, or if you're being kind of prepper minded and you're feeling insecure about things going on in the world and you're like, man, I really don't want to be fully dependent on these obviously fragile systems. Having dry beans in storage is a pretty solid guarantee that you're going to be able to feed your family. A lot of people, when they hit a hard time, they think they have to just go buy a bunch of ramen noodles or something like that in order to get through. And unfortunately, what ends up happening a lot of times when we are in a low budget situation, and I have totally been there, is we feel the need to just get as cheap a food as possible. And a lot of the easy options that are super cheap really just don't have a lot of nourishment in them. And you can eat what I'm about to show you per serving. It's going to cost roughly about the same as a little container of ramen noodles. This is just way more nutrition and it's so tasty. This is really, really good food. Whenever you cook a pot of beans to make it taste good, it's very satisfying. I mean, my kids grew up, obviously eating this stuff, and to them, it's just like some of their favorite stuff to eat. It's hilarious to me when we're traveling and we have to go to restaurants. Their favorite restaurant to go into is Chipotle, which is more or less glorified. It was just a bowl of rice and beans. That's like $13. It's just absolutely insane to me. But it just goes to show, my kids enjoy this, not for the budget, not for the nutrition. They like it for the taste. It's very tasty to them. So beans are really high in zinc, in folate, magnesium, potassium, and when paired with rice, it's said to be perfectly rounded nutrition, which is not surprising because pretty much every culture and cuisine has some variation of rice and beans. They're just great staple foods, and both of those things, rice and beans, are things that store for a really long time. Like dry beans, if you're keeping them in a sealed container, they're gonna stay good for years, years and years. So it's definitely something, if you're looking to create some food security for yourself and you're looking to create some margin in your budget, if you're able to go buy a bulk bag of dry beans and put them in some sort of sealed container, there's just a lot of security in that. Now these bags here, I got these at Walmart. I buy beans in bulk, but I just wanted to kind of go from something that some of you may be more accessible to you. This bag here, pinto beans, they're kind of one of the cheaper beans you can buy, $1. The black beans and the small red beans were in more like the $1.50 range, obviously still cheap food. They did have some 8-pound bags of these beans in the $6 range. So you already, just by bumping up to that larger amount buying, you're dropping your price per pound pretty significantly. Whereas you can a lot of times go buy a 25-pound bag of beans for $18 or a 50-pound bag of beans for maybe $30. I like to go to a restaurant supply store for that. We have one here called the US Food Chef Store, and I bought a lot of large quantities of dry beans there. I also order from Azure Standard. If you're prioritizing ordering organic food, they have the best bulk prices for organic dried beans that I have found. So I've ordered quite a bit from them. I'll put a referral link to Azure. I think you get a discount if you use that. I don't remember how much it is. Either way though, even if you're having to buy them in small quantities, $1 a pound, this is gonna create about 6 cups or so of cooked beans from this 1-pound bag, and I think that's about 10 servings. I mean, if you're considering eating about a half to 3/4 of a cup. I mean, realistically, if you're feeding my hungry now preteen boys, they probably eat about a cup of cooked beans each, but even still, with 6 cups for $1, 6 servings for $1, that's still really, really cheap and good food. All right, so let's jump in on cooking these in the Instant Pot. Today, I'm going to be going from fully dry into the Instant Pot. It's going to take a little bit longer that way. If you want to pre-soak your beans, which you may want to do, typically what I will do with like a few cups of beans, one pound of dry beans is roughly like 2.5 to 3 cups of beans. And I will take the few cups of beans, I'll put it in a really large bowl or a tall, like a gallon container, and then I'll just fill it, you know, about halfway up with water. Those are going to expand greatly. They're going to be at least double the size. And just put like a tablespoon of salt in it, and then just leave it on the counter overnight, or stick it in the fridge and leave it in the fridge overnight. And then I just leave it in the fridge until I'm ready to cook them. I created a printable information page for this video. It'll be in the show notes down below. And I showed with different kinds of beans the estimated cook time in the Instant Pot, whether you have them soaked or not soaked. So that will give you all that information. It is an estimate. Older beans take longer to cook because their cell walls harden as they dry out, you know, over the course of years of being stored. Makes perfect sense. So if you are cooking beans that you've had in storage for over a year, you may want to automatically up that time, or you may just want to soak those just to guarantee that they're going to be like nice and as soft as possible. That's what I do. If I'm cooking like older beans, I will soak them. These I just bought at the store, so they'll go directly in there. And even with that being the case, don't stress over that. Like, it's fine. The worst case scenario on following those estimated cook times, which smaller beans take less time, like these black beans, probably I think they're like 35 or 40 minutes, whereas like kidney beans are 50 minutes, garbanzo beans, chickpeas are like 60 minutes. But the worst thing that's going to happen if you get this wrong is you're going to open your Instant Pot after it does the natural release, and your beans aren't going to be fully cooked. They're still going to be kind of hard, crumbly, and you're going to go, oh shoot, and you're going to put the lid back on and start it for 10 more minutes, and then they're going to be done, or whatever. You know, like, just add a little more time. Now, regarding soaking beans, different people respond to things differently. Soaking beans does break down the phytic acid that are in them, and it said that it can make them more digestible. There have been some kind of conflicting studies on that. Some people say it doesn't matter, other people say it does. My family has absolutely no issue with me putting dry beans in the Instant Pot, cooking them, and us eating them. Like, nobody ever complains of a tummy ache. But if you have in the past like felt like you didn't want to eat beans because you felt like they upset your stomach, just try soaking them and see what happens, because that can potentially alleviate the issue. All right, so let's get started. I'm gonna do the pinto beans today. The first thing we need to do is we need to rinse these and sort through them, and then we'll come back and get started in this. So most dry beans that you buy are actually picked and shelled in the field. So they're coming to you dirty. You definitely want to rinse them off and wash them before you do anything with them. The other thing is you want to look through and see if there's anything like really deformed, or if there are any little rocks and stuff, which can happen. You want to pick those out. So I just throw them in a colander, swish it around, you know, thoroughly wash them off. If I see anything real, you know, like funky looking, I go ahead and pull it out. Anything like a lot of times the cheaper brands of beans will have more like weird little things in it, but these are actually really nice. There was only one like real shriveled up, and it would be fine if I cooked that, but I'll just take it out. Nothing else. Looks pretty good. So typically cooking this, what I will do is cook a cake of cornbread. I actually have one here that I made last night, and I still got this much left. I'm not going to make any more today because we need to use that, but that recipe was not great. I've been playing with fresh milled flour. I shouldn't say it's not great. It was okay. It was just not how I like cornbread. I like cornbread real dense and a little on the sweet side, and that one was real like fluffy, so I'm going to have to play around with that. I just turned the saute feature on, and I'm going to let this start heating up. And I'm going to do everything in this pot. So I have less dishes to wash, because that is always how I like things to go. I've got an onion here. This is like a large sweet onion. You can totally use whatever kind you like, white, yellow. I'm showing you a recipe today, but I don't want you to think of it as like a strict recipe. When you think of it just like as a diving board, you could totally take beans and put them in water. You want to do for a pound of beans, it's about 6 cups of liquid if they're dry, if they're not soaked. It's about 3 or 4 cups of liquid if they are soaked. But you could totally just put beans in water and cook them. Season them on the back end. If you want to cook plain beans and then take them out and freeze them so you can use them in other things, like if you want to make like a bean salad or something like that, you can totally do that. Use the cook times on the chart that I put printable down there for the type of beans you used, the amount of water that's listed, and just do them completely plain. That's fine. Now, adding what I'm adding does not add a lot of cost, and it adds a ton of flavor. It makes this a very delicious and enjoyable meal. But you don't have to do exactly what I'm doing. Like, you can totally mix this up. Today, I'm going to start this with an onion. Actually, I need to grab some celery out. I'm going to do a couple stalks of celery. And I'm going to put quite a bit of garlic in here. I'm probably going to use about 8 cloves, but I eat garlic like vampires are a real threat. You don't have to put that much in there if you don't. It is best to use some sort of oil, not a lot, just like a couple of tablespoons. That helps with any foaming that may happen while these beans cook, and it just keeps everything just smoother. I don't know how to describe it. If you have a lot of foam when your beans like boil and cook in the pressure cooker, it kind of, in my opinion, makes kind of just the slightest grittiness, and the oil fixes that where you won't have it. So I shared a recipe earlier this week that was like a quick red beans and rice using canned beans. I do also have a video showing how to take dry beans and pressure can them so you can create the ease of canned beans without paying the price for them. 1 pound of beans equals about like 3 to 4 cans of beans. And when you consider like a can of beans is in the like $1 to $2 range, depending on where you buy it, what brand you're getting. And right here, you know, you're looking at in the $1 range for the equivalent of 4 cans. Obviously, you save a lot of money by buying them dry, but sometimes you may want the convenience of cans, and canning them yourself is a really great way to do that. So I do have a video showing that. I'll link that as well. But in the red beans and rice video, I had several commenters ask me, oh, if I have a little bit of ground breakfast sausage, or could I use this, could I use that? Yes, like this, as long as you get the liquid ratio right, that your beans are going to cook properly, I mean, you can more or less do whatever you want. I think it would be very difficult to mess this up based on what you put in it. And I say that, and I understand there is a measure of common sense that is required in that, but you can play with this. It's the margin for what's going to taste good here is very large. So if you wanted to add bell peppers at this point, you could do that. If you wanted to add more veggies, if you wanted to cut up carrots and add them at this point, that's a really great way to kind of stretch this. And I'm gonna put 6 cups of broth in. Broth adds more flavor than water. Obviously, it's also adding a little more nutrition. This turned off. I'm just sitting here talking to y'all while this is off. I must have not pressed start actually. Bless me. Okay, so I was wondering. I was like, this usually heats up faster. Lord. But if you ever want to make this more soupy, just add more liquid. You can do just like 2 full quarts, which would be 8 cups of broth. You could go even more than that if you wanted. And then, you know, you add in those extra carrots, that extra stuff. Well, on the back end, one thing I like to do sometimes if I do add more liquid and make them soupy is when the beans are done cooking, I take the lid off the pressure cooker, and then I'll shred up some kale and throw it in there and turn the saute function on and just let it simmer a little bit, 5 minutes or so, until the kale's cooked down. And then you have like a beans and greens soup situation, which is also really good. That's really great with like some crusty bread, some cornbread. All right, we are heating up now and starting to sizzle. I'm gonna put my onion and a couple of stalks of celery in here. Another thing, lentils are really good cooked this way, but I'll put the cook time for lentils on that sheet. They're not really a true bean, and they're a lot more tender, so they cook way faster. You wouldn't want to cook lentils for 50 minutes in the pressure cooker because they'd turn pretty mushy at that point. Now that we're getting some color, everything's nice and soft. That took about I don't know, 6 minutes or so, I'm going to squeeze in several cloves of garlic. All right, now I like to put my seasoning in a hot pan that doesn't have a lot of liquid in it and toast it just a little bit, but you need to like move pretty fast here and pay attention that your stuff isn't burning, and put a tiny bit more oil in there because that saute function is hot. I'm gonna do like a tablespoon of smoked paprika. I do season, I would say, on the heavier side. I know there are people who do heavier than I do, but you don't have to put this much stuff in. You can also put different things in if there are flavors that you like. I do add about a teaspoon of garlic powder and onion powder, even though I already put garlic and onions in. I think it just intensifies the flavor. It's a cheap addition and easy. So I'm going to do a teaspoon of each of those. I'm going to do a teaspoon of cumin. This I wouldn't necessarily put in all beans, but since these are pinto beans, what I will do with this sometimes is we'll either eat these with rice, or on the back end after they're cooked, you can put an immersion blender in this, mash them up, and then put them in a pot on the stove and simmer them down more, and you have refried beans. And with those, you can do like bean and cheese burritos. I'm gonna do about a half a teaspoon of cayenne. I personally like more than that. I like more like at least a full teaspoon, maybe even more. But I have some picky kids that don't like super spicy stuff. I'm gonna do a whole tablespoon of dried thyme. That's simmering, super fragrant. Another really good thing in beans is like spicy peppers. If you have jalapeno peppers or something like that, just chop those up and put them in. Yeah, probably with the garlic, maybe with the onions, whichever one would be fine. Sauteing that just opens it up. Now, I had a couple jars of broth in my fridge. Store-bought broth is fine in a pinch, you know, and it is relatively affordable for a quart container. I typically shop at places like Aldi, or I buy things at Costco in bulk. So it's in the couple dollar range. You can get it for less than that, but that was warning me things were about to start burning. Another way to make this more economical is, let's say you roast a whole chicken and you eat that for dinner, and then you say whatever's not eaten, and you are gonna put it into like a chicken pot pie the next day, or into some sort of soup, or into like burritos or something like that. Take that carcass and simmer it in water and save the broth. When I'm just doing like one chicken's worth of broth, I typically will just strain it out, put it in jars in the fridge, and find a way to use it. Or you can save every carcass you have for, you know, 4 or 5 of them, put them in bags in the freezer, and then when you have enough bones, do like a big pot of broth, and then that would be enough to like fill the pressure canner and save it. Another really good addition to add flavor is to put in tomato paste, but if you're gonna put any sort of tomatoes in dry beans before they're cooked, especially if they're not soaked, the acid in those, I cannot remember what the science is. Essentially, the acid causes the breakdown of the cellular wall of the bean to go a lot slower. So if you want to like put tomato paste in to add that flavor, you would need more cook time. All right, so everything's in here. You can't really see it because they're all down in that delicious, flavorful, fragrant liquid, which is what's gonna make this taste so good. So we want to put the lid on. Make sure your vent's closed if that's not automatic. And we are going to do, I just do custom. It has a bean section, which is just, I mean, you could use that. It's just high. So we want, I guess I'll use the bean section. I want to do 45 minutes for pinto beans. Okay, and then I'm just gonna start it. Of course, it's gonna take a little bit to get up to pressure, so it's actually gonna take about an hour or so to cook. And then I just do natural release on these. So it takes about another 10 or 15 minutes to be able to open the lid. So in all, I'm looking at about an hour and 15 minutes for these to be done. And if this is gonna be one of your first time cooking them, if you don't know how old your beans are, whatever, you may wanna give a little bit of wiggle room on that in case you do need to give them a little bit more time. But following that chart, that's pretty accurate. All right, you guys, this has done a natural release Actually, I'm gonna have to let a little bit of steam out to get it to open. You wanna let it do a natural release for like at least 10 or 15 minutes. I realized after this was already halfway cooked, I was like, I didn't put the meat in there. Let me tell you real quick what you can do. You can do nothing. This is a complete food without any meat added. Typically, if I'm adding meat to a pot of beans, it's seasoning meat. It's not really to add a lot of substantial protein. If I smoke a turkey, chicken, anything like that, I will like save the wings. I'll save one of the turkey legs and throw it in here. I'd actually dug out some smoked ham hocks that I had. For this, I was going to put one of them in the pot, and you just, after you put the liquid and the beans in, you would just stick whatever parts you had. If you go to the store, you can buy ham hocks, neck bones, you can buy smoked turkey wings. They're relatively affordable. I mean, for roughly $5 or so, you can get, you know, a hunk of something to put in your pot of beans. Adds a lot of flavor, and of course, if you're putting something in that has bones, that's going to add collagen. All right. Even without any meat, this smells great. If you want to do vegetarian pot of beans, but you want to add the flavor of like having put meat in it, just put a little liquid smoke in it. But you don't have to put any meat in it at all. If you do want to add, you know, more substance and protein, you can do like a half a pound of ground beef. You can do sausage. You can do smoked sausage, just like I did the other day on the red beans and rice. Andouille sausage is great. Dice it up small to stretch a smaller amount through the pot. It's going to give you little pieces, or don't. If you put like a ham hock or a turkey leg, it's going to cook all the meat off that bone, and it's going to be all mixed throughout. So you can do whatever you want, or you can do nothing and it's still good food. All right, it's getting real steamy. These are cooked just about perfectly, I would say. They are soft but still solid. A few of them may be kind of mashed, which I like that. If you want this thicker, you can mash some of the beans, turn the saute option back on, and just let it simmer down a little bit. Do be mindful, I mean, you can burn stuff with that saute option. It gets real warm, but I think this is perfect. So I'm gonna show you how I like to eat this. Get a slice of cornbread. This is fresh milled flour cornbread. That's why it's so dark looking. It's put this in a bowl, and this goes over it. I want that broth too. There we have it. That is some good food, my friends. I always make my cornbread in a cast iron skillet, but if you want to make this and freeze it into individual servings, you can also make your cornbread in a muffin pan and freeze those in individual servings so that you can always have cornbread with your beans. But yeah, there it is. That was too hot to bite, but it's so good. Yeah, even without meat, it's still good, just really good food. I'm eating this for lunch. My kids aren't here right now, but we actually have a pretty substantial winter storm coming in. So most of this actually is going in the fridge to save for the weekend so that I have something that I can just easily heat up on a butane cooking eye, because we're supposed to get a lot of ice and they're telling us to prepare for a power outage. So I'm actually cooking some things ahead of time. I'm gonna can some beef stew also. Which actually will probably be my next video. So yeah, that's it. That is a delicious pot of beans. The easiest way, about the cheapest way. It's hard to say exactly how much this costs per serving, because obviously I'm buying all of these seasonings bulk. If you had to go buy each individual bottle, you would, you know, on the cheap end pay $1 each for a small bottle. But if you've already got this stuff, literally this is maybe a $3 pot of food with 6 very generous servings in that. That could be stretched even further with rice, with cornbread. I feel like knowing stuff like this, how to do it, and also how to make it enjoyable, is just a life hack. I mean, it's just gonna serve you. So thank you guys for hanging out with me today. I'd love to know, what do you like to do with your dry beans? Let me know if you're gonna try this. I bless you. Until next time.